They say the world is what you make of it. But what if the world is literally made by you, moment by moment, breath by breath, gaze by gaze? Before you opened your eyes this morning, reality was sleeping beside you, not in the sheets or the sky, but in your awareness, waiting to be imagined into being. The trees didn't grow green until you looked at them. Time didn't start ticking until your attention stirred the silence into seconds. The mystics, the madmen, and the physicists all circle this truth with different languages. The outer is the inner reflected. The observer is the observed. The dreamer is the dream. We live in what could only be described as an echo chamber of our innermost assumptions, a world stitched together by subconscious beliefs more ancient than language itself. And what we call facts are simply agreements too old to question. Is the moon still there when you're not looking? Science says yes, but your soul, your deep, wild, quiet knowing may whisper, only if you believe in it. For in a reality built from attention, the gaze is sacred, and in a world woven of perception, truth is less about evidence and more about resonance. Consciousness does not float above matter. It dances within it, disguised as mountains, storms, algorithms, lovers, and loss. Every object you see is not an object at all, but an invitation, an interface for your awareness to commune with the ineffable. And somewhere deep inside you, beneath the data and the dogma, you remember this. You remember that long before there were names for things, there was only the nameless presence of being, not human, not animal, not atom, just aliveness, humming itself into shapes we mistake for permanence. So if consciousness is the original phase, then what are we doing here, walking around in these fragile human forms, haunted by questions, tethered to the ticking of clocks? Why are we born into a world that seems so convincingly solid, yet breaks apart the moment we close our eyes and dream? Because this life, this seeming limitation, is the canvas upon which consciousness paints. The body is not a prison, but a brushstroke. Time is not a trap, but a tempo. Just as a song needs silence to give it rhythm, the soul requires form to recognize its own formlessness. This is why mystics across cultures retreat into solitude, silence, stillness, not to escape life, but to pierce through its illusion. Rumi wrote that silence is the language of God, all else is poor translation. In silence, the mirage of separateness begins to fade. You realize that the tree outside your window and the thoughts circling in your mind are made of the same essence, awareness noticing itself in different costumes. There is no such thing as an external world. What you call the world is the reflection of your own awareness filtered through countless veils of perception, memory, belief, and trauma. And as the veils fall away, something terrifying and beautiful begins to occur. You no longer experience life through the borrowed language of culture or biology. You begin to feel life directly. A breeze across your skin is no longer just weather, it becomes a caress from the infinite. The glance of a stranger holds galaxies. The line between subject and object, observer and observed, begins to blur until all that remains is this, pure being. But this kind of awareness doesn't come without a cost. Awakening is not a dopamine hit. It is annihilation. The personality, the ego, the little self that believed it was steering the ship must die. And it does not go quietly. It clings, fights, bargains. It tells you you're going mad, that you're losing yourself, but what you're actually losing is the illusion of being separate. You're not dissolving, you're returning. That's why awakening often feels like loneliness at first. Not because you are truly alone, but because you have outgrown the dream of others. You begin to realize that people aren't separate entities, but echoes of your own psyche. Every friend is a symbol. Every lover is a mirror. Every enemy is a teacher dressed in shadow. And you begin to walk through the world, not as a person, but as presence. And yet, even as you awaken, the game continues. The illusion doesn't vanish, it becomes translucent. You still see the world, but now you see through it. A tree is no longer just a tree, it's the universe remembering how to grow. A person is no longer just a face or name, they are the infinite folded into a temporary form. Duality still dances before your eyes, light and dark, joy and sorrow, life and death. But now you recognize them as necessary masks worn by the One. You begin to notice the hidden architecture of life, the synchronistic patterns, the symbolic language of events, the dreamlike fluidity of what we once called coincidences. You no longer ask if the universe is alive, you ask how it's communicating with you today. A bird crossing your path becomes a message. A delay in traffic becomes divine timing. Every moment, even the mundane, feels like a sacred script being acted out for your awareness. This is not fantasy, it is the deeper truth we forget when we enter the dream of matter. The material world is not wrong, it's just incomplete. It is the visible half of an invisible whole. And once you see this, life stops being something you survive and starts becoming something you participate in, like a symphony that only plays when you listen, or a painting that rearranges itself based on your inner state. And here's the strange paradox. The more deeply you awaken, the more ordinary things become magical. You don't need psychedelic visions or thunderous revelations. You look at a cup of tea and see eternity staring back at you. You hear someone laugh and feel the Big Bang echoing in that sound. You realize that this is it, the infinite disguised as the finite, perfection hiding in the folds of imperfection, divinity whispering through the cracks of your everyday life. But this awakening also brings responsibility. Once you remember that you are dreaming the dream of life, you can no longer blame the dream for its content. Victimhood dissolves, projection ends. You realize that everything you resist in others is a fragment of your own unintegrated self. The people who anger you are holding pieces of your shadow. The situations that break you are breaking the false parts of you. Life is not happening to you, it is happening as you. This is where true power is born, not the power to control others, but the power to transmute within. Alchemy, once misunderstood as the turning of lead into gold, was always about this, turning unconscious patterns into awakened presence, transforming pain into wisdom, turning the forgotten self into the remembered soul. The soul, you realize, has been whispering to you all along, but in the language of symbols, not logic. It speaks through archetypes, through dreams, through the faces of those you are drawn to or repelled by. Carl Jung called these patterns the collective unconscious, the ancient blueprint etched into the psyche of every human being. These are not fantasies, they are the architecture of the inner world. When you fall in love with someone or clash with them, it is not them you are reacting to. It is the archetype they activate within you. You do not attract people randomly, you summon them. The kind, the cruel, the lost, the luminous. They are mirrors, each revealing a part of you you have forgotten, denied, or disowned. The tyrant awakens your inner victim. The muse awakens your suppressed creativity. The betrayer calls out your fear of abandonment. These relationships are not accidents. They are soul contracts, inked in the invisible before you were born, each one designed to press upon the wounds that must become wisdom. This is the essence of shadow work, not demonizing what you see in others, but recognizing it as your own unlived potential. Every projection is a missed opportunity to reclaim a piece of yourself. The anger you feel? It's a compass pointing to where your boundaries are not being honored. The jealousy? A signpost toward unloved talents buried beneath self-doubt. The fear? A guardian at the gate of your next becoming. These emotions are not enemies, they are sacred messengers. And once you begin to listen, not reactively but reverently, you step into true inner alchemy. The unconscious becomes conscious. The disowned parts return home. You stop chasing love in others and begin to embody the love you've been searching for. You stop fearing death because you realize nothing real can ever die. Only the illusions fall away. Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." And this is what the path is. It is not a ladder you climb, but a veil you pull back. The more you look within, the more the world outside begins to reflect what's truly there. And when the inner world is fragmented, life becomes chaotic. But when the inner world becomes whole, life becomes meaningful. Not because it changed, but because you did. The universe is a mirror, and you are both the one looking and the one being seen. At the deepest level, there is no separation between observer and observed. You are not watching the universe, you are remembering yourself through it. Time, as we've been taught to know it, is not linear. It is not a straight path from birth to death, from yesterday to tomorrow. It is a spiral, a living, breathing organism that loops and folds upon itself. The past is not behind you, nor is the future ahead. Both are within you, embedded in your consciousness, like seeds that bloom only when you are ready to perceive them. You have met yourself before, in dreams, in déjà vu, in strange moments of recognition, when a place or person feels hauntingly familiar. You are living parallel versions of yourself in other dimensions of this reality, versions that made different choices, followed different desires. Every decision you've ever made, and every decision you didn't, all still exist in a multiverse of possibility. When you sit in stillness deep enough, long enough, you begin to feel the echoes of those other selves, not as an imagination, but as a resonance. The one who forgave instead of holding a grudge, the one who chose truth over comfort, the one who never forgot how to listen to the wind or speak to the stars. All of these selves still live, and sometimes they bleed into your now, whispering through your intuition, shaping your dreams, nudging you toward paths you didn't know you were missing. And what guides this? Divine intelligence, not as a bearded deity on a throne, but as an infinite field of knowing. Not a God who watches, but a consciousness that becomes. It is the intelligence that grows trees from seeds without instruction. The presence that coordinates galaxies without effort. The awareness that lives in your breath, your heartbeat, your longing. This divine mind does not force, it invites. It doesn't punish, it teaches. And it teaches in riddles, heartbreak, coincidence, synchronicity. It leaves clues in your suffering and light in your loneliness. When you are brought to your knees, it is not because life is cruel, it is because something sacred is being born in the ashes of your false self. What we call pain is often sacred architecture being reshaped. What we call endings are initiations. What we call silence is the cosmos preparing you to hear a deeper truth. You were never abandoned, you were being rearranged. And the more you surrender to that intelligence, not in blind faith, but in awakened trust, the more your life begins to move with a strange grace. The right words come, the right people appear. The path, once invisible, begins to reveal itself, not all at once, but just enough to take the next step. In this deeper state of being, you no longer chase outcomes. You align with them. You don't fight reality. You dance with it. You begin to understand what Rumi meant when he said, "What you seek is seeking you," because you realize you were never seeking something outside of you. You were seeking the version of yourself who was finally ready to receive it.